beside me, we rise like a tide. When the storm gets rough, we ain't gonna hide. Poppin' can is swilling, but it won't touch me. Only love around, that's how it's gonna be. Keep moving forward, never looking back. The truth's in the power, it's an unstoppable track. In the city lights where dreams collide, we hustle through the night, fire in our stride. Whispers in the dark can't dim my glow. With rhythm in my soul, I'm ready for the show. We break the chains, rewrite the rules in this concrete jungle where nobody's fools. Unity sings louder than the lies they scheme. In our heart and the struggle, we dare to dream. Keep moving forward, never looking back. The truth's in the power, it's an unstoppable track.
Another Queen Ahmadiyyah production.
Haze on the corner, they talking real loud. Spreading on light, trying to bring me down. Enemies love you, but I won't back away. Got a vision in my mind, I'm here to stay. Got my crew beside me, we rise like a tide. When the storm gets rough, we ain't gonna hide. Poppin' can is swilling, but it won't touch me. Only love around, that's how it's gonna be. Keep moving forward, never looking back. The truth's in the power, it's an unstoppable track. In the city lights where dreams collide, we hustle through the night, fire in our stride. Whispers in the dark can't dim my glow. With rhythm in my soul, I'm ready for the show. We break the chains, rewrite the rules in this concrete jungle where nobody's fools. Unity sings louder than the lies they scheme. In our heart and the struggle, we dare to dream. Keep moving forward, never looking back. The truth's in the power, it's an unstoppable track. Haze on the corner, they talking real loud. Spreading on light, trying to bring me down. Enemies love you, but I won't back away. Got a vision in my mind, I'm here to stay. Got my crew beside me, we rise like a tide. When the storm gets rough, we ain't gonna hide. Poppin' can is swilling, but it won't touch me. Only love around, that's how it's gonna be. Keep moving forward, never looking back. The truth's in the power, it's an unstoppable track. In the city lights where dreams collide, we hustle through the night, fire in our stride. Whispers in the dark can't dim my glow. With rhythm in my soul, I'm ready for the show. We break the chains, rewrite the rules in this concrete jungle where nobody's fools. Unity sings louder than the lies they scheme. In our heart and the struggle, we dare.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning back in once again to the original Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur show. I'm your host, Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur, and this is your Sunday Vitamins. So as you're coming in, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so already, be sure to click that notification bell and click the word all so you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. And also, please double check to make sure that you're still subscribed to the Queen's channel, especially if you have not been receiving your notifications. All right, so let's get ready to get into it. Hello, Bronze Flat Power God, Yvette, Pearly, Claudette, Deronda. All right, and let's get into it. We the people. 504 Nola, G from the land. All right. Shout out to all of my loyal girls and everyone tuned into the Queen. I see you, Vince. I am from the UK. All right, and shout out to my moderators for putting in work. I see you, Desmond. Okay, Juju B is in the house. Emperor Rex. Okay, nice. M10K is here. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and hit that like button, okay? Thank you. Here we go.
Do not buy 12 Tribes on Earth hair growth oil and hair magic elixir unless you want super healthy, gorgeous hair that grows. They have a whole line of amazing hair growth products, including hair growth leave-in conditioner spray, hair growth shampoo, hair growth spray, and hair growth butter. I'm starting to sense a theme here. They include quality natural ingredients. They smell amazing, and you can see the results for yourself. So if you're looking for healthy hair growth for your natural or relaxed hair, try 12 Tribes on Earth today.
Okay, so don't forget you can purchase 12 Tribes Hair Oil at Etsy.com. Just look for Lisa Crafts. You can also find her products at Walmart.com. And don't forget that she sells beard oil. Okay, so let's get ready to get into it. As I told you all on yesterday, I have a PowerPoint presentation we're going to go over. We're going to be talking about stagflation, okay, and the effects of it coming to the U.S. But before we get into that, let's talk about Breonna Taylor because the DOJ wants to drop the charges on the officers charged. Okay, so let's get into it. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. Here we go. Now, this is a report from ABC News. Going to share my screen. Actually, I'm not going to share my screen. I'm just going to tell you what they basically said on this report because the clip is only like 37 seconds. So, the Justice Department on Friday asked a court to drop charges against two former police officers accused of providing false information on a search warrant that led to the fatal 2020 police raid at the apartment of Breonna Taylor. Now, first bringing charges against the officers in 2022, federal prosecutors alleged that Joshua James and Kyle Meany provided false information on the search warrant that allowed police to enter Breonna Taylor's Louisville home. Now, they were also charged with civil rights violations. Here's the thing, this was 6 years ago. Okay, first of all, what's taking so long? What's been the holdup? And now the DOJ wants to drop charges. So, in a filing Friday, an attorney with DOJ's Civil Rights Division said those charges should be dropped and said the department has notified Taylor's family of the move. Now, a federal judge had twice struck felony charges against the two officers, reducing them to misdemeanors. Most recently, that was in 2025. Now, they say the government undertook a further review of this matter, and this is according to the filing. They say based on that review and in the exercise of its discretion, the government has determined that this case should be dismissed in the interest of justice. In the interest of justice, really? So whether the remaining charges are ultimately dropped is up to a judge who has yet to issue the ruling. Now, Taylor was fatally shot in 2020 in a raid that came as plainclothes Louisville officers were serving a search warrant for Taylor's ex-boyfriend, who they alleged was dealing illegal substances, but who was not at the apartment. Officers broke down the door to Taylor's apartment, and her then current boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who thought someone was breaking into the home, fired one shot with a handgun, striking an officer in the leg. Now, three other officers returned fire, shooting 32 bullets into the apartment. A former Louisville officer, Brett Hankinson, was convicted of a civil rights offense in connection with Taylor's death during the raid and sentenced to 2 years and 9 months in prison. Now, the Department of Justice's move to dismiss these remaining charges is deeply painful for Breonna Taylor's family, and it sends a chilling message about the value of Black lives in our country. Now, this is what Ben Crump and Lonita Baker, okay, both attorneys for the Taylor family, they said this in a statement. The attorneys also added that the warrant that sent officers to Breonna Taylor's door has always been at the center of this tragedy, and it deserves no less than the highest level of accountability. We cannot accept a reality where a young woman can be killed in her own home and no one is held responsible under the law. That is not justice. That is injustice compounded. And I have to agree. But this whole thing was so shady from day one because I reported to you all back then. For those of you who don't know, who were not following my channel, I was covering that story very heavily. Okay, at the end of the day, I knew, we all knew that the warrant was fraudulently obtained. That came out early on. But what also came out early on is that the young man they were looking for, Jamarius Glover, was not only not at her residence, didn't live at her residence, that was not his address, but he was already in custody. Okay, he was already in custody. And let's not forget how the police supposedly lied on the postmaster or the postal inspector. Just lies and cover-ups, and still here the family is still trying to get justice. Okay, please pay attention. Now let's go to this next report because LMPD claimed that they're going to make some changes. I seriously doubt it. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
is resolving its allegations of unconstitutional policing against the Louisville Metro PD without an admission of guilt or liability. The consent decree comes after Breonna Taylor's death in a botched police raid in March 2020. Now the Justice Department is ending its case, saying the LMPD has agreed to make changes to their policies. Louisville's mayor says their agreement will lead to positive changes in the community.
LMPD has rewritten its policies, revised its procedures, and reorganized its departments. Officers are getting better and more training, and more and better care when they need it. We are collecting the data we need to make good decisions and measure whether we are meeting our goals.
Now, I want you all to pay attention to how he's just doing the same thing that Pete Hegseth does, or Pete Kegsbreath. Okay, he's just spewing word salad. We're collecting, listen to this, we're collecting the data to make better decisions. What does that even mean? Okay, so you need to go and compile data to help you make good decisions. The police officers are getting more and better training. Well, what kind of training were they getting in the first place? Okay, because if you ask me, when they talk about these so-called improvements and more training and all of that, what you're initially saying is that these people are not competent, or that the training has not been adequate previously. Okay? I find it all interesting. Nice and 10K says, you see Trump's recent truth post unhinged. Thank you for your question, beloved, and your contribution to the channel. I appreciate you. Peace, love, and blessings. We're going to get into Trump momentarily. But I think this is all so ridiculous. These people, I don't believe a word that they're saying. And I think it's very ignorant of the Justice Department to say that they're going to drop the charges, or they want the charges dropped, you know, in the name of justice. Justice for who? Not the police officers, because they weren't victims. Breonna Taylor and her family were. But let's continue.
The Department of Justice saw the action we've already taken and our commitment to aggressively implement police reform.
And I want to bring in ABC News Justice reporter Jack Date for more on this. Jack, what more can you tell us about this agreement and the changes the Louisville Police Department is committing to?
Well, then the Louisville Police Department has agreed to really increase its training, its transparency, the support that it offers its officers. But, you know, this comes after a 2023 investigation was released by the Justice Department showing that that department really used excessive force, things like dogs and tasers. They used invalid search warrants. They made unlawful stops. They violated the constitutional rights of their citizens, and they discriminated against Black people routinely. And so they have a lot to fix in this department, and training is just the beginning.
Now, Attorney General Merrick Garland made civil rights investigations into police departments a priority in his Justice Department. How much of an impact has that had?
Well, some of that remains to be seen, Diane. These types of agreements and investigations take a long time to play out. Now that they've entered into an agreement in Louisville, as they have in several other cities, that could take years to implement the training and reforms that are needed to really improve conditions in policing in those cities. And so some of that remains to be seen. Also, with an incoming administration that may take a different view to these types of investigations into policing and police departments and the use of consent decrees, it remains to be seen if these types of agreements will continue to be enforced in the incoming administration. In the first Trump administration, they really curtailed the use of consent decrees and launching investigations into police departments.
All right, ABC.
All these people are saying just a bunch of nothing as far as I'm concerned. Now let's go to this clip where they talk to, they say Breonna Taylor's mother and family attorney speak out against the DOJ's move to dismiss the charges. No justice. And then it's already been 6 years. Like, this is just ridiculous as far as I'm concerned.
Justice is asking a judge to dismiss the charges filed against two former LMPD officers in connection to the raid where Breonna Taylor was killed by police in 2020. Joshua Janes and Kyle Meany are accused of falsifying the affidavit used to obtain the search warrant for Taylor's apartment. In August, the felony civil rights charges against them were dismissed. Today, the DOJ filed a motion to dismiss the remaining misdemeanor charges. The judge has not yet ruled on that motion. An attorney for the Taylor family says this is an alarming move by the DOJ.
What we have right now are people who work for the Department of Justice, who I don't even want to acknowledge that they are attorneys, but they unfortunately are attorneys who are not upholding their legal obligation and signing documents. They're pushing forth the political agenda instead of fighting for justice for people like Tamika Palmer, for Breonna Taylor.
The attorneys for both Janes and Meany say that they are in favor of the motion. We also talked to Breonna Taylor's mother. We'll have her reaction tonight on WLKY after the basketball games conclude.
And also, they said there were some people protesting about this, and they were arrested. Some of them were arrested. One of them was Breonna Taylor's aunt. Okay, so please pay attention. Yeah, there's not going to be any justice, unfortunately. I mean, they'll do everything they can, everything in their power to protect corrupt police officers. It should not have been a question of them being charged. Everybody who was participating in that warrant, that fraudulently obtained warrant and the search and raid, all of them should have been going to prison. Every last one of them, because everything about it was illegal. And then they tried to cover it up and told a myriad of lies. Okay, so now let's talk about Iran and the economy. The Iran war is impacting the global economy, and Asia is particularly vulnerable. Now, they say the U.S. and Bibi's People's War on Iran is now in its fourth week, and reverberations are being felt all over the world. Gas prices have jumped in the United States, and many countries in Asia, Africa, and France are also facing higher fuel prices, plus supply chain shortages and disruptions in key trade routes. Now, during her White House visit last week, Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi summed it up this way. Prime Minister basically said, our global economy is now about to experience a huge hit because of this development. And then she was basically then, I guess the interviewer, Roscoe, says, Martin Wolf is chief economic commentator for the Financial Times, and he joins me now from London. Welcome to the program. Okay, I'm not going to read this. This is a back and forth of their interview, and I'm not going through all of that. Bottom line is, yes, this is going to disrupt global economy, but we already knew that because I've already discussed it. But here's the thing. We're going to get into just how bad it can get in a moment. But first of all, let's talk about the $200 billion funding request, because now they're saying that is simply just a down payment. Okay, I want you all to pay attention. A down payment. Now, this was reported by MSNBC. And to answer your question, Nice M10K, they're going to be talking about some of his Truth Social posts. This man is just so ridiculous. I mean, he's destroying the world piece by piece and brick by brick, literally all by himself.
Donald Trump posted on his social media site yesterday afternoon, quote, we're getting very close to meeting our objectives as we consider winding down our great military efforts in the Middle East. The Hormuz Strait will have to be guarded and policed as necessary by other nations who use it. The United States does not, end quote. In a report in Axios, a U.S. official downplayed the idea of winding down the war with Iran, by the way. Quote, he just said, we are getting close. In the meantime, the U.S. military is striking hard and continuously. It will be a couple of weeks, end quote. I've never seen a war. I've covered a lot of wars in my career. Never seen one where it's so confusing, the information that actually comes out of the government as to where we are in this war and what success actually looks like.
I'm sorry. Didn't I just say the same exact thing days ago? You heard how he said he's never seen a war where everything's so confusing, especially the information that comes from the government? Yes. I told you all the same thing last week. I said it's really confusing because, they're not being transparent. They're just lying about different things that have or have not happened. Here's the thing. They lied and said, now I find it so interesting. And how do they think that we're so stupid? Now, I get it when they feel like MAGA is stupid, because they are. Okay, so I get that. But why would they think the rest of us will believe the foolish lies that they tell? Okay, they lied about the aircraft getting blown out of the sky. They said it wasn't struck by either war fires or friendly fires. That's what they said. And there were 2 aircraft involved. That's as much as they said. So we're to think it just fell out of the sky. And then the 2 ships, remember, I told you, the 2 ships that got hit, and they were both on fire at different times, and they lied about it. The first lie they told was they said that it was the laundry room. A fire started in the laundry room. And then when the second one caught on fire, they told another lie. It's just so ridiculous. Like they're so desperately trying to make us think they're winning the war. And you have to know, even if you didn't before, that they're absolutely losing, because why would they need to embellish or just tell blatant lies? For what? And as much as Trump boasts and brags about the war being over and how much they're winning, which is still begging for help and all of that. So nothing that they're saying makes a bit of sense. So we can't believe or trust these people at all. Let's continue.
But in that couple of weeks, Donald Trump may soon come to learn how much America actually does depend on the Strait of Hormuz, and it's for much more than just oil. Anyway, last night he threatened to strike Iranian power plants within the next 42 hours, so that's by Monday about 7:42 p.m. Eastern, if the strait is not reopened. In response, Iran threatened to destabilize the Red Sea region, which, as you remember, is another choke point for shipping if the U.S. strikes Iranian power grids. Now, even if we imported absolutely nothing from the Persian Gulf, and we do import goods from the Persian Gulf, the knock-on effects of closing the strait to other markets across our very interconnected global economy would actually hurt us here at home. It already is. 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz to be shipped to global markets. Now, Donald Trump may think that because we don't use that particular 20% of oil, doesn't go to American ports, that it doesn't affect us. That would be, what's the word we use in Canada? Stupid. Because now that the strait is blocked, oil prices are going up across the board, even for oil originating outside the Gulf. Oil originating in America that stays in America, because oil is priced globally. Consumers everywhere pay more when oil prices go up. But that's not it. Generic prescription medication in America may be at risk. According to CNBC, most prescriptions that are filled in America are generics. And of the generics, 47% of our prescription supply comes from India. And 40% of India's oil comes from the Gulf. Now, you're wondering how oil connects to your drugs? Pharmaceutical companies need petrochemical inputs for the manufacturing of drugs. So if the strait remains closed, a key part of America's medical supply chain may actually get hit. Another key component of global industry, bet you I hadn't thought about this one, is helium. Helium is used all over the place. It's used in medical imaging. It's an important input in the production of semiconductors, which are critical for all the technology we use. And 1/3 of the world's helium is produced in Qatar. It's actually a byproduct of liquefied natural gas. But the largest facility in the world for liquefied natural gas was struck by the Iranians last week, knocking out a significant proportion of its production. Global helium prices, according to CNBC, have shot up anywhere between 70 and 100% already. The Gulf is also a massive producer of fertilizer. The United Nations estimates that 1/3 of global fertilizer comes through the Strait of Hormuz. The countries most dependent on fertilizer from the Gulf also happen to be some of the poorest countries: Somalia, Sri Lanka, Sudan, and Pakistan, according to the United Nations. And apart from the pressures on the economy, which will ratchet up the longer the war continues, there are the actual costs to American taxpayers to consider. The Pentagon confirmed it will request $200 billion from Congress to fund the war. That's according to the New York Times. The Pentagon already told Congress it estimates that more than $11.3 billion were spent in the first 6 days of the war, which, of course, Trump doesn't call a war. Our next guest, Nicholas Kristof, notes in the New York Times that figure would amount to about $1.3 million a minute. A minute. And using that number, Kristof calculates all the things we could be doing instead of this war. Quote, for a bit more than 2 weeks of this war, we could offer free college education to every American family earning less than $125,000 annually. That'd be $30 billion a year. Remember, they are looking for $200 billion.
They definitely wouldn't do that. They definitely wouldn't do that. Okay, they spend the money what they want to spend it on and then act as though they don't have it for anybody else. And also, I'm convinced that the United States doesn't want to help the homeless people, that they want to keep homeless people living on the streets. Okay? And some people think that the reason they want homeless people is to remind the rest of us what it could look like for us. Okay, so we keep working. All right? Like they're bots. I want you all to pay attention. Now, with that all being said, let's go to this clip from Al Jazeera where they say Trump threatens to obliterate Iran's power plant. plants. And he basically gave them like a 42-hour ultimatum, a 48-hour ultimatum. But just pay attention to how often he's using the word obliterate now. And Trump, didn't he say that after the 12 days war last June, that they already obliterated their nuclear capabilities, but then they start this war saying that they're dangerous because they have nuclear capabilities, and then they kept changing the story back and forth. Like, this whole thing is just a farce at this point. But let's continue.
Says the US will, quote, obliterate Iran's power plants if it doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. He said the US would target the biggest power plant first. Trump issued the threat via social media on Saturday evening. A fifth of the world's oil and gas typically transits through the strait. Iran has effectively blockaded since the US and Israel started the war 3 weeks ago. Well, Iran responded immediately. A spokesman for the armed forces said it will retaliate against all US energy infrastructure in the region if attacked. Those threats were made as Israel carries out another round of airstrikes on the capital, Tehran. Al Jazeera's Tawhid Asadi joins us live now from the Iranian capital. Tawhid, so President Trump has threatened to blow up the power plants in Iran. What impact would that have then on the lives of ordinary Iranians if it happened?
Well, actually, that's going to be quite dependent upon the very nature of these potential strikes. We know that this is not the first time that Iranians are facing attacks targeting their infrastructures. Previously, we've got the energy minister of the country in the second week, if I'm not mistaken, from the initiation of these airstrikes, coming out to say that some of the electricity and water infrastructures of the country were targeted. But still, we're dealing with another potential major blow. And also, we have to keep in mind that we witnessed a very disastrous, I would say, attack by the Israelis and Americans targeting the oil facilities inside the capital. We know that 3-4 oil depots, fuel depots, as well as oil infrastructures were targeted since the beginning of these airstrikes in the capital, which created a lot of damage, specifically when it comes to environmental aspects. We know that the water, soil, and air contamination was a serious health issue, a serious concern for people who are living actually in the Iranian capital. But still, now there is this further risk in case that happens. And of course, rhetorically speaking, we saw this very immediate reaction by the Iranian side, by the spokesperson of SATANyahu headquarters, who came out just very short while ago after the Trump's statement to say that there is going to be a tit-for-tat strategy when it comes to retaliation. And this is part and parcel of Iran's strategy since the beginning of these airstrikes. They're saying that in case a bank is attacked, we're going to attack banks. If a oil facility is targeted, we're going to do the same. And this is just this echo of the same statement that we heard from this spokesperson. Very strong message, very clear message that in case of such an attack, Iran's retaliation is going to be just based on that tit-for-tat strategy.
Yeah, meanwhile, Tawhid, there have been more airstrikes across Iran. What more can you tell us about them?
Well, actually, this is the continuation of these airstrikes. Over the past few hours, we have been able to hear the sounds related to activation of the air defense system of the capital. And we know that it happens mostly when there are some drone attacks, and also, of course, in other cities, specifically in Karaj, a city which is located in the western part of the Iranian capital, Tehran. We hear and we receive reports about explosions being heard in eastern parts of Tehran. Also, we've got reports about explosions taking place. One of the common, let's say, places where these strikes from day one are happening. And of course, it goes without saying that this is not the only night. We know that since the beginning, in more than 200 cities, we have witnessed the airstrikes by the Americans and Israelis. More than 1,400 people have lost their lives with many more injured, and specifically speaking of the targets, it goes without saying that it is not just the military headquarters or police stations or even the state-related buildings, but also residential areas which are being targeted. We know that a considerable number of them are houses and apartments belonging to very ordinary citizens, and of course schools, hospitals, and even buildings belonging to the Red Crescent have been targeted over the past 3 weeks since the commencement of these airstrikes.
All right, Tawhid Asadi, live for us there in Tehran. Tawhid, thank you.
Beloved. Hold on, let's go to this next clip. Now, here's the thing. You know, Trump got involved in this war with Bibi at his behest, okay, whether they want to say that or not. But what's interesting is during this whole time, you know, it's interesting how Bibi gets this war going on with Iran, but at the same time, then he pivots and starts, you know, beefing with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Like, what's that all about? Okay, what is that all about even? Just complete chaos in the Middle East, and who is at the center of it? Okay, I mean, it's the same old players if you ask me. But let's continue. Like everyone, please like and share. Thank you in advance.
On its power plants will trigger immediate retaliation, including the full closure of the Strait of Hormuz, strikes on energy facilities and U.S.-linked interests across the region.
In reiteration of our previous warning, if any fuel or energy facilities in Iran are targeted, we will respond by targeting energy and technology institutions and desalination plants linked to America and the Zionist entity in the region.
It comes after President Donald Trump warned that he would destroy Iran's energy facilities if it does not open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. The waterway is a critical choke point for ships transporting oil and gas out of the Gulf. Well, we are live in Tehran, in Washington, D.C., in Ramallah, Tyre, that's in southern Lebanon, and in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, also in the Iranian capital. And that's where we start in Tehran with Ali Hashem. So, Ali, we now have this standoff. The U.S. president telling Iranians, you have 48 hours to open the Strait of Hormuz, or I will blow up your power plants, starting with the biggest and most important one. Iran has responded, and it seems that they have no intention of doing what the U.S. president is asking of them. Can you walk us through the response that you have seen from Iran over the last few hours?
Well, Cyril, in the middle of this war, it seems that another war is going on, which is the war of rhetorics and narratives. And with President Trump raising the stake, the Iranians are responding with more confrontational rhetoric. And it's clear now that there is a unified position here, because we're hearing, after we heard from the armed forces, we heard from the Speaker of the Parliament, and now the Vice President, they're all on the same point. The moment the power plants in Iran are going to be hit, the whole region will go for a blackout. And more than that, the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed, and it won't be open except these plants were rebuilt according to the armed forces. Now, with respect to the other authorities here in the country, like the Vice President, he tried to defend Iran's position, saying that this is self-defense and that Iran is under the aggression, and that's why it will be self-defending itself by launching attacks against regional power plants and, of course, Israel. So this is the picture in general with respect to this point precisely. But what's clear here is that this whole conflict is going towards a dead end. There's no possibility for the moment to get down the ladder, at least from what we're hearing from both sides. Each side is taking, or at least is escalating their own rhetoric. And this could lead to what's really worse than the situation we are in currently.
And Ali, something that perhaps is noteworthy that happened today. We heard from the Iranian representative at the International Maritime Organization. His message was actually the Strait of Hormuz is not completely closed, and if foreign countries collaborate or work with us, we can get some of those ships through the strait.
Well, Cyril, this has been the case from the beginning. They've been talking to people, to companies, and there is a kind of a procedure that they're imposing. And they are saying clearly that only ships related to the United States and Israel and their allies aren't allowed to pass there. There were several conditions put on the table, but clearly the Iranians want to impose, at least to experience this leverage they have. They want to make use of it, exploit it in order to create a new status quo, not only today and in the middle of the war. We heard several Iranian officials, including the foreign minister, saying that post-war reality should be Iran should have its leverage still to allow people to get in and out of the Gulf.
They said everybody can get oil, everyone can get crude, except for the U.S. and their allies. Okay, did y'all hear that? But hold on, because someone made a video about it. Hold on, let me go to it real quick. Okay, now that was funny. Okay, now with that all being said, Soul Sister said 48-hour ultimatum. What a fool in office. Okay, he absolutely is a fool, but that was hilarious to me. I don't know who did that, but shout out to them. Okay, now with that all being said, listen, one of the top military officials, and this man, his name is Dan Keene. Okay, he's the Joint Chief of Staff. I think the assistant or whatever. His name is General Dan Keene. Now, this man specifically told Trump, okay, advised Trump not to go into war with Iran. Suggested that it was not a good idea, and that in fact, they didn't even have enough munitions. Okay, but Trump has sat there and lied to our faces and gaslit us for weeks, talking about they have more than enough, and then saying that Iran was running out. And then what happens? They run out. Why do you think they need this $200 billion? Okay? Hold on, beloveds. He just doesn't listen. And then also, let me tell you something. Yeah, he's the 22nd chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Okay, he was put in that position April of 2025. But yes, so like I said, this man is one of the highest ranking officials, and this is what he told them. But Trump didn't listen because he always thinks he's the smartest person in the room. Okay, though we all know how stupid he really is. Now, another thing I wanted to go back to is yesterday, this report by CBS. Remember how they were saying, if I'm not mistaken, let me go back to this clip, but they were saying something about Iran is making threats about doing something to tourist spots in the U.S. First of all, I don't believe that, because if they're making threats, if they're going to do something, why would they tell us? Okay, why would they let you know? And if you already know and they've said it, then should you be making preparations for safety issues?
Here. Want to start with those additional Marines that are heading to the region. What does this signal to you?
Well, while the president is saying...
Hold on. Okay.
nuclear material in their possession. The president, according to CBS News reporting, hasn't made a decision whether there will be an operation to try to recover this material. What would an operation like that even look like? And will it require troops going in?
Well, nuclear disarmament is complicated and time intensive under the best of circumstances with a cooperative government during peacetime. And the U.S. has a long history of doing just that after the fall of the Soviet Union, with the International Atomic Energy Agency in Libya and elsewhere. The U.S. government, via its Special Operations Forces, does train troops to secure nuclear material.
I don't want to do a ceasefire. You know, you don't do a ceasefire when you're literally obliterating the other side.
So we begin tonight with CBS's Charlie D'Agata, who is once again in Tel Aviv for us tonight. Charlie, good.
Hold on, beloveds. I'm just going to skip past this. Hold on. I'm going to skip past that because I don't remember exactly the timestamp. But do you all remember them saying, hold on. That's what they were reporting. I can't remember. Okay, here it is right here. Here it is right here, the report. It says Iran threatens to target tourism sites worldwide and says it's still building missiles nearly 3 weeks into war. So 3 weeks into the escalating war in the Middle East, Iran threatened Friday to expand its retaliatory attacks to include recreational and tourist sites worldwide, as the U.S. announced it was sending more warships and Marines to the region, which they haven't done because so far nobody showed up. Nobody has sent ships to help the U.S. Okay, hours later, President Donald Trump said on social media that his administration, in fact, was considering winding down military operations in the region. His post came after another climb in oil prices sent the U.S. stock market sharply lower. Now, the mixed messages came as the war has no signs of abating, and Israeli airstrikes landed. As Israeli airstrikes landed in Tehran, Iran launched more attacks on Israel and energy sites in neighboring Gulf Arab states. And the region marked one of the holiest days on the Muslim calendar. Iranians were also celebrating the Persian New Year, known as Nowruz, a normally festive holiday. Now, with little information coming out of Iran, it was not clear how much damage its arms, nuclear, or energy facilities have sustained in the punishing U.S. and Israeli strikes that began February the 28th. Or even who was truly in charge of the country. But Iran attacks were still choking off oil supplies and denting the global economy, raising food and fuel prices far beyond the Middle East. The U.S. and Israel have offered shifting rationales for the war, from hoping to foment an uprising that topples Iran's leadership to eliminating its nuclear and missile programs. There have been no public signs of any such uprising and no end in sight of the war. Okay, so now here's the thing. Now, don't you all think that if in fact Iran was talking about attacking tourism sites worldwide, first of all, that would be a bold move. So you're going to attack worldwide tourism facilities, but why? When you're battling the U.S. and Israel. Why would they say that? I don't believe they said it. And here's the thing. We have them coming out saying so many things. We have them coming out making, telling us what they're going to do, saying that they're going to retaliate. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. They come out and say these things. Okay. So how come we don't have the footage of them saying that? Because that sounds like propaganda being spewed by the U.S. government or BB. Okay, that's just what that sounds like to me. So sister says somebody's lying. Exactly. And I meant to point that out to you all last night, but I was too focused on the rest of the report that they were giving. But at the end of the day, I just find it very interesting. Okay, so they're talking about hitting tourism spots worldwide. So have they put extra security in places at these tourism sites? I'm sure they have not, because we haven't heard anything about it. Okay, this is nothing but propaganda to prepare us for the false flag that's coming. Okay, there's a false flag coming. I guarantee you. I bet you this. I feel it in my spirit. And at the end of the day, now I can't guarantee this. I can't. This is all speculation. But I absolutely believe there's a false flag coming. Okay, and they're going to tell us Iran did it. And that's what they're doing right now, in my opinion, is setting the stage. Okay, setting the stage so that when something catastrophic happens, everybody's looking at Iran. Okay, now we're going to get into this PowerPoint that I put together for you all. And then after that, I'm going to go to this clip of the foreign minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi. Okay, speaking on the death of their head of security, Larijani, who was taken out, okay, by the U.S. or Bibi's people just days ago. Okay, so now let's get into this PowerPoint, because everything that we've been talking about thus far about the economy, the global economy, and all of that, prices raising, we're about to get into it. So I'm going to share my screen. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. That's the way you can support the channel for free. All right, I appreciate you. Peace, love, and blessings. Okay, now with that all being said, let's get into it, beloveds. Hold on, let me get this pulled up on my end. Hold on, and get my glasses together. Okay, so stagflation. Let's get into it. Now, stagflation is an economic condition combining stagnant growth, high unemployment, and high inflation. It represents a double trouble scenario, basically, where prices rise while economic output shrink, making it difficult to fix because traditional policies like raising interest rates to curb inflation can often worsen employment and stifle growth. Okay, so please pay attention. So it's basically like when you have high levels of unemployment and, high inflation rates at the same time, simultaneously. Okay, unemployment rises, inflation rises simultaneously. And this phrase was actually coined in the 70s. Now, let's talk about what happened in the 70s. Okay, now first, let's talk about the causes of stagnation. Okay, typically it's triggered by a supply shock, such as rapid oil price spikes, like in the 70s, okay, or supply chain disruptions. Other causes include poor economic policies or large, inefficient government spending. Impact on individuals. Now, stagflation causes a decline in purchasing power as prices for goods rise while wages remain stagnant and unemployment increases. Now, it causes a dilemma because central banks usually face a difficult choice. To fight high prices, they may raise interest rates, but doing so further slows economic activity and increases unemployment. Now, let's talk about the crisis they had in the 70s. And see, this is why I often tell you all that history repeats itself, and those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Because what we're going through here now with this war, something very similar happened in the 70s. Okay, so the U.S. experienced this in the 1970s, early 1980s, due to oil shortages and high unemployment, resulting in severe economic discomfort. Now, the Yom Kippur War in October of 1973 led Arab members of OPEC to impose an oil embargo against the U.S. Now, I want you all to listen to this, because you see, this right here is the same old soup twice warmed over. You see, this is a situation that was going on with Bibi's people as well as Syria and Egypt back in the 70s. But the U.S. wanted to stick their nose in to help out Bibi's people, just as they're doing right now. And it all went bad for them then, and it's going bad for us now. Okay, so why is it, ask yourselves, that the U.S. is always putting themselves and their economy, our economy, at risk, okay, of economic decline for Bibi's people? But let's continue. Okay, so basically, OPEC, the Yom Kippur War in October of 1973 led Arab members of OPEC to impose an oil embargo against the U.S. and other nations supporting Bibi's people. Now, this oil weapon, triggered by U.S. military aid to Bibi's people, caused production cuts, quadrupled oil prices. Listen to the things that happened: production cuts and quadrupled oil prices, And of course, there's going to be production cuts because when you can't get supplies in, you can't get the things shipped to where they're supposed to be, you can't get food delivered where it's supposed to go. These things all can lead to famine and all sorts of things. It disrupts the supply chain. Okay, it quadrupled oil prices and sparked a global energy crisis and an economic recession. And this is where we are headed, people. On October the 6th of 1973, Egypt and Syria attacked Israel following President Nixon's decision to provide $2.2 billion in emergency aid to Israel. Arab oil producers, they basically decided to cut production and eventually ban exports to the U.S. Okay, do you all hear that? They decided to ban sending things to U.S. Okay, I want you all to pay attention because, like I said, this is all what the U.S. has always been doing. Another thing, too, that I'm going to look into is the fact that, hold on, beloveds, it's the fact that now they're saying that some of the Arab countries want to take away their support from the United States because of this war and everything that's going on. Like, it's really causing a bunch of trouble. And by the way, OPEC is for Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. Okay, so with that all being said, let's continue. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. Thank you in advance. Now the embargo. Let's talk about it. On October the 17th of 1973, okay, OPEC, I don't know why I have this A in here, announced immediate cuts targeting the United States, okay, as well as the Netherlands, Portuguese, Rhodesia, and South Africa. Now, oil prices soared from under $3 to over $11 per barrel, causing severe gasoline shortages, rationing, and long lines at gas stations, especially in the U.S. Now, they had lasting effects because the embargo lasted until March of 1974, leading to a permanent shift in U.S. energy policy, a greater focus on efficiency, and higher inflation globally. Now, mind you, this situation had nothing to do with the U.S., okay? Just like we had nothing to do with the war on Iran. Now, an energy crisis. So shortages and panic. This is all what ensued. Reduced supply caused gas station lines to stretch for miles, leading to rationing, panic buying, and a massive strain on the U.S. economy. Stagflation. Now, the crisis fueled high inflation and economic stagnation throughout the 70s. It highlighted U.S.'s vulnerability to foreign oil dependence, sparking a push for energy conservation, the creation of a strategic petroleum reserve, and increased domestic energy production. The national maximum speed limit was even lowered to 55 miles per hour to save fuel. And more fuel-efficient cars began to gain popularity. Okay, so that's why our speed limit is 55. I want y'all to pay attention. Fast forward to now. The war with Iran can trigger stagflation, okay, high inflation paired with low growth by disrupting critical global oil supplies via the Strait of Hormuz, spiking energy costs and reducing consumer spending while simultaneously causing a supply shock that slows economic production. Now, the conflict has closed the Strait of Hormuz, forcing Brent crude oil prices to $112.19 a barrel and increasing gas prices to around $4 per gallon, creating a massive inflationary surge reminiscent of the 1970s oil crisis. Okay, this is looking like the same, like basically the same situation like I told you all. And again, this all started because the U.S. was helping those other people. And I just don't understand what is it that gets the U.S. to do this, to put their own economy at risk, their own people at risk, you know, just for things that, and not even just our economy, but the lives of these soldiers, okay, fighting wars they should have nothing to do with. Make it all make sense. And then meanwhile, like I said, Bibi turns around and pivots and is also simultaneously attacking Lebanon and battling Hezbollah. Now, the Strait of Hormuz. The near total halt of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has caused a catastrophic disruption, driving prices into triple digits. The U.S. and allies are working to stabilize supply, including potential releases of crude, which has caused some easing of the highest price points. Now, we're not running out of total energy, but rather facing a crisis of supply sufficient. Okay, sustainable energy due to surging demand from AI and technology. While fossil fuels are finite, with current reserves estimated to last roughly 50 years for oil and gas and over 100 for coal, an immediate bottleneck is infrastructure limitations, not total depletion. Now, a rapid increase in demand for AI, data centers, and manufacturing is outpacing energy production in regions like Georgia and Texas. Okay, why'd they have to say Georgia? Do y'all hear that? And let's not forget how I told you all how much water that AI consumes just in a day. And there are some water, bodies of water like lakes and ponds and things that absolutely just look like they're just drying up. Now, as the war in the Middle East stretches into its fourth week, energy supply chains around the world are starting to buckle under the pressure. Iran has reportedly is not interested in discussing reopening the Strait of Hormuz, one of the globe's most important passageways for oil and liquefied natural gas. And world leaders are running out of options to shield consumers from skyrocketing energy prices. And they want us, the U.S. and their allies, I suppose, specifically the U.S., wants us to blame Iran for all of this. But this is the fault of no one else but Donald Trump, because he did not have to go along with this nefarious war. Okay, he didn't have to stick his nose in it. He didn't have to get us involved. For now, countries in Southeast Asia are taking the brunt of looming potential shortages. Now, the region imports almost 80% of its crude oil from the Persian Gulf, and roughly 25% of the region's liquefied natural gas must pass through the Strait of Hormuz. The Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand are particularly sensitive to supply chain disruptions because of their low to non-existent reserves. The region is starting to feel the impacts. Around 40% of gas stations in Laos and about a third in Cambodia have closed because of fuel shortages. The Philippines has instituted 4-day work weeks to reduce energy use. Sri Lanka also rolled out a 4-day work week for state institutions and schools. Pakistan has closed schools for 2 weeks to conserve energy. So we're seeing the effects of this worldwide already. Okay, and it's not even a whole month in yet. Okay. So airplane juice is expensive and difficult to store. So jet fuel stockpiles are usually much lower than those of other fuels like gasoline or diesel. Now, drastic prices for jet fuel, which have jumped as high as $200 per barrel compared to their pre-war price of $85 to $90. Okay, these are often the first signs that oil supply is in trouble. Airlines have canceled flights and warned of price increases to offset the cost. American Airlines said earlier this week that it expects its expenses this quarter to surge by $400 million due to fuel prices. So do you see how drastic this is? And the thing is, Iran is playing the long game here. They're playing chess, not checkers, because that's why I told you all what they're doing. What they're doing is basically asymmetric warfare. Okay, economic warfare. This is their strategy. Okay, if Trump doesn't just call a ceasefire, doesn't just go ahead and end this thing, it's literally going to bleed us dry. And then the United States, the dollar is losing its value. It has to compete against BRICS. We already know that Iran has done another smart move by saying that the countries who want to come through the Strait of Hormuz can do so, but they have to pay in Chinese yuan, okay, not in American money. So think about that. They're weakening the dollar even further. But let's continue. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you in advance. And what about the U.S.? Economists have waved away fears of a recession, saying that the U.S. economy is pretty much immune to oil price shocks. Unfortunately, U.S. consumers aren't as protected. U.S. gas prices, one of the most politically charged markers for the economy, have increased by $1 on average to almost $4 per gallon since the war began. So what are we talking about here? Okay, make it make sense. Saying that the U.S. is pretty much immune to oil price shocks. No, we're not. We're already seeing it. And so the petrodollar deal, let's talk about that. See, this was a series of agreements between the United States and Saudi Arabia in the 1970s. It wasn't a single signed treaty, but rather a set of strategic understandings that reshaped global economics and security. Now, why did this deal happen? Well, because in 1971, under Richard Nixon, the U.S. ended the dollar's link to gold, okay, the collapse of the Bretton Woods system. Now, this created a major problem. The U.S. dollar needed a new way to maintain global demand. At the same time, oil had become the world's most critical resource. Then came the 1973 oil crisis, where oil-producing nations, especially Arab states, restricted supply, causing prices to skyrocket and exposing the U.S. to vulnerability, or exposing their vulnerability. Because remember, the U.S. acts like they're so big and tough. So then the core agreement from the mid-1970s. So around 1974 to 1975, the U.S. under Richard Nixon and later Gerald Ford reached key understandings with Saudi leadership, especially King Faisal bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. Saudi Arabia agreed to, first of all, price oil exclusively in U.S. dollars, invest surplus oil revenues, the petrodollars, okay, into U.S. assets, especially treasury bonds, and to help stabilize global oil markets within OPEC influence. Now, the U.S. agreed to provide military protection and security guarantees. This is what the U.S. was going to do in exchange for the Saudis, pricing oil exclusively with U.S. dollars. So they were going to provide military protection and security guarantees, sell advanced weapons, and provide military training and support the stability of the Saudi monarchy. Now, what does petrodollars mean? Because oil is traded globally in dollars. Countries must hold U.S. dollars to buy oil. Okay, this creates constant global demand for the dollar. So it adds value to the U.S. dollar. So it helps the U.S. run large deficits while maintaining currency strength. In simple terms, oil demand, dollar demand strengthens U.S. global financial power. And this is what they're losing right now, okay, as this war continues to go on. So the protection aspect wasn't a formal NATO-style treaty, but it has been very real in practice. U.S. military presence in the Persian Gulf, defense cooperation agreements, protection of oil shipping routes like the Strait of Hormuz, okay, and examples over time. U.S. support during regional threats, tensions with Iran. U.S. troops sanctioned in Saudi Arabia during and after the Gulf War. So why does this even matter? This arrangement helped make the U.S. dollar the world's dominant reserve currency. It gave the U.S. enormous economic leverage globally. It cemented a long-term strategic alliance with Saudi Arabia. Now, the petrodollar system isn't completely gone, but it is being challenged in ways that we haven't seen since the 1970s. The 50-year security for oil petrodollar agreement between Saudi Arabia and the U.S. signed in 1974 expired June the 9th of 2024 and was not officially renewed. While not a dramatic cancellation, this enables Saudi Arabia to sell oil in multiple currencies. Okay, they can sell it in yuan and euro, signaling a shift toward economic diversification and a multipolar world. And if you ask me, it just seems, in my opinion, like the U.S. is like Trump, basically. Okay, he's the idiot here. It just looks like he's being played by BB, and it's too dumb to know it. Okay, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. Jamie said, we're being used as pawns in a monopoly chess game between the rich. Yes. Okay, the haves will win and the have-nots will suffer. It's time for the American people to come together. Exactly, because that's exactly what's going on, beloved. That's exactly what's going on. Thank you for your insight into the topic, because that's exactly what it is. Okay, please pay attention. Now, so China is pushing oil trade in yuan, and China is now the world's largest oil importer, and it's actively trying to reduce reliance on the US dollar. Okay, it has encouraged countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia to accept Chinese yuan for oil. It launched oil future contracts priced in yuan, and sometimes it's called the petro yuan. So do y'all hear this? Now, Russia now sells a significant portion of its oil to China in yuan or rubles, okay? Especially after Western sanctions. Now, what do y'all think about this? See, this is how you know that Trump is he's just getting us really messed up. Okay, he's just really getting us messed up. Like nothing about this war is going to help us at all. Okay, nothing about this is going to help us one bit. Please pay attention. Let me look at some of the comments. DJ Big Six said we have to go to work. We have to not go to work, okay? Do you all think that would help? Do you all think that perhaps we need to boycott? What do you all think we need to do? What do you all think we need to do? At the end of the day, I really don't think anything that the public does is going to help Trump. I just don't. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. But anyway, so let's continue. Now they're out here paying in yuan and rubles, but the dollar's not going to be worth a darn thing. It's going to be just like monopoly money, okay? Because it's almost there at this point already. So, like I said, Russia now sells a significant portion of its oil to China in yuan or rubles, okay? Especially after Western sanctions. Now, BRICS and the de-dollarization. Okay, so the group known as BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are now expanding. It's openly discussing alternatives to the dollar. Their goals include trading with each other in local currencies, building financial systems outside of U.S. control. See, I told you all, everybody's just turning away from the U.S. Okay, and this is all thanks to the idiot in charge. Potentially creating a new shared currency. Okay, now still speculative, of course. Countries like India are already buying discounted Russian oil using non-dollar arrangements. And so Iran knew exactly what they were doing when they told the people that if you want to come through here, okay, we'll let you, but you can't pay us in US dollars. So Saudi Arabia is hedging its bets. Saudi Arabia hasn't abandoned the US, but it's no longer fully dependent. Now, it has deepened ties with China, its biggest oil customer, joined BRICS discussions, and publicly signaled openness to non-dollar oil sales. At the same time, it still heavily relies on U.S. military equipment and security cooperation. The U.S. and Saudi relationship remains intact, just less exclusive. Now, we don't know how long that's even going to last, because like I told you all, it's been reported that some of these Arab countries want to fall back from the U.S. Okay, and they want to stop their investments in the U.S. and they are stable, like they really help our economy very significantly. So if they pull out of our economy, what's that going to do? Okay, we're really going to be in a struggle then. So sanctions are accelerating the shift. U.S. sanctions on countries like Russia, Iran have had an unintended effect. They push those countries to build parallel financial systems outside the dollar. For example, Russia now conducts much of its trade in yuan, and Iran has long used barter and non-dollar trade channels. So what Iran is actually doing, what are they doing? Iran is trying to move away from the dollar and tank our economy at the same time. That's what they're doing, okay? Selling oil outside the dollar system, that's the first thing, okay? Because of sanctions, Iran sells oil to countries like China. Often, when they do, they often use yuan, barter, or alternative payment channels, okay? The next thing they do is working with non-Western financial networks, building ties with China and Russia, using systems that bypass U.S.-controlled banks, like SWIFT alternatives. playing smart. And this is why I say they're clearly playing chess. They're clearly playing chess while the US and BB are playing checkers. Okay, they don't even have an end game. Okay, the US doesn't. So would a yuan demand hurt the US? Oh, well, of course, absolutely. If a major oil route forced global trade in yuan, it could reduce global demand for dollars, strengthen China's financial influence, and weaken the US economic leverage. And really, right now, that's just about all the US has is an economic leverage. Now, countries under sanctions like Iran and Russia reduce dollar use out of necessity. China promotes yuan in trade. Some partners experiment with non-dollar oil deals, and this is a gradual erosion, not a sudden attack on the dollar, but they're doing it slowly but surely. Now, what are the consequences? Blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, even a short disruption, okay, days or weeks, which we're already in, could send oil prices soaring, shock stock markets, trigger global panic buying. Remember during the pandemic how people were out there just panicking and buying up all the toilet tissue and stuff, and then buying things in bulk, and then price gouging and selling these things for triple and even 4 times what they paid for it online to others. Now, economic ripple effects. Okay, oil prices surge. Oil could spike to extreme levels very quickly. Gas prices rise worldwide, including in the US. Inflation returns fast, and transportation and food costs increase. Energy-dependent industries get hit hard. Global markets react and stock markets drop due to uncertainty. Safe haven assets like gold and US Treasuries often rise. Now, if all of the dominoes fall, the average person might notice things like gas prices spiking sharply, electricity and heating costs rising. Okay, cost of living, groceries noticeably more expensive. Shipping costs will be baked into everything. Okay, and let's not forget about Trump's tariffs, okay, being a cause for that. And also, where's our checks that we're supposed to have gotten? Didn't you say he was giving everybody $2,000 checks because of the money he got back for the US for the tariffs? I mean, just all the lies. Okay, jobs and economy. Hiring slows or layoffs increase in some sectors. Small businesses struggle with higher cost. Investments, retirement accounts, stocks drop in the short term. Okay, volatility becomes the norm. And what's the worst part? Well, the most serious risk isn't a single shock, it's repetition. If Hormuz disruptions become a pattern, global trust in stable energy supply breaks down. Countries reorganize trade permanently. The world shifts into more fragmented economic blocks. With that all being said, a Strait of Hormuz crisis is a worst case chain reaction. Okay, it could trigger a global energy shock, push the world toward recession or stagflation, accelerate a shift toward a more divided multi-currency system. Okay, I want y'all to pay attention. And all of this because of the war. So what do you all have to say about all of this? What do you all think? Because stagflation is coming soon to the United States. Okay, we're already seeing, the consequences. We're already seeing the consequences of this war in the few weeks that it's been here. And like I said, it's going to get worse the longer they stay over there because it's costing millions of dollars per minute. Isn't that what they said? Millions within like 10 minutes or something like that, not just a day. It's likely billions of dollars a day. And now they want 200 billion more. And who do you think this money is coming from? The taxpayers. Gregory said he got to be impeached. I mean, he really needs to with the quickness. Okay, what are they waiting on? And also, let me just tell you all something too. What I thought was interesting is remember when they had they were talking about doing an investigation into the school shooting, right? Now, remember how Trump was blaming it on Iran, saying that other people have tomahawks and all of that. But do you all know that they ended up saying that it was an accident? This is a lie they tried to paint. Hold on, let me go to the footage. Yeah, they tried to act like it was an accident. But let me tell you something. This was all done on purpose. They know exactly what they were doing. Now they're trying to act like they used faulty equipment or something like that. The bottom line is the school was painted blue and pink. And right beside the school or on the property, there was a whole playground. So if you saw a building with a playground and it was painted blue and pink, you would likely know that it was a school, a daycare, or some type of facility where children would be. Okay, so they knew what they were doing. That was all on purpose. Now, I want you to pay attention because what the U.S. is trying to do is trying to act as though they don't purposely or didn't purposely murder those kids. And I'm telling you they did because they knew those were the soldiers' children. Also, how you know they did it? Let's not try to act like they have morals all of a sudden. How you know they did it on purpose is because what did Pete Hegseth say? First of all, he said something about they need more money to kill bad people. Isn't that what he said? But before that, he also made the comment about stupid rules of engagement. That's what he said. This war won't be fought by stupid rules of engagements. He said something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. But basically, he said he wasn't going to go by the rules. And there was no rules of engagement as far as he was concerned. So if there are no rules of engagement, that means that he's willing to commit war crimes. And that means that he's willing to tell Trump that he needs to give orders for war crimes to be committed. And we know that they've already been doing that when they were blowing up those boats and lying on those people that were fishermen trying to make a living and saying they were smugglers. And even if they were smugglers, you don't blow them up. Okay, they still have a right to due process. Okay, but this just goes to show the barbaric mindset, the depraved mindset of these low vibrational devils. Okay, because that's exactly what they are. Yeah, trying to make excuses and basically saying that they didn't do it on purpose. Hold on, I'm going to go to one of the clips. I'm going to go to this report. I want to say this is from CBS, from the Nation. Okay, yeah, talking about the daily strike, the preliminary investigation said that it was not intentional. They had bad equipment. I said, get out of here with the BS.
An elementary school in Manab, Iran. Our CBS reporting is that nearly 200 people were killed, likely the result of outdated intelligence that was used for the target coordinates, according to the preliminary assessment. Secretary Hegseth said he has appointed an investigator from outside Central Command to do a full probe. From what you have been told, did the fatal error originate from within the intelligence community? Or was this an issue with the military not vetting the intelligence they were given?
Margaret, we've only got preliminary assessments, and I want a thorough investigation. But what I don't want to do is jump to the conclusion whether it was CENTCOM or whether it was Defense Intelligence Agency. That's what thorough investigations are supposed to be for. Clearly, it was an American strike. I again feel a little disappointed that the president tried to deny that at first or say it was even the Iranians. This is where, what we've got, the words of the president of the United States are terribly important in moments like this. And unfortunately, President Trump uses loose language all the time. That didn't ever come to the American people on this war of choice and say what our goals are. And we still don't know other than the 4 goals he outlined. I'm not sure we're going to accomplish, but he's going to then, whenever he decides, and where I disagree with my friend Kevin Hassett is, this is having a huge economic effect. In Virginia, 2 weeks ago, gas prices were $2.81.
Yeah.
Today, they're about $3.45. I saw a farmer yesterday, his fertilizer costs have gone up 40%.
No, and we'll continue to track that. Just to put a fine point on this, though, because this was a school full of children. If a mistake like this happens, are you confident in the rest of U.S. intelligence that is continuing to be used for targeting and to inform what is happening on the ground now and the more than 50,000 service people we have committed here?
This is why we want the investigation. This school, though, was absolutely adjacent to an Iranian military base. That does not excuse what happened, but that's why before I cast blame on whether it was the military or DIA, I want to get the facts. I think we'd all do a better job if we actually argued from facts rather than from suppositions.
You won't be getting any facts from the Trump administration because all they do is lie. They don't even know the meaning of the word facts. Okay, that's what they don't know. They don't know anything about the meaning of the word facts. Now, with that all being said, here is a report with the foreign minister, Abbas Arakchi, and this is from 5 hours ago. Okay, where he talks about Laranjani's death. So let's go to that. Also, it looks like something just came in. Let me see here. They said the Strait of Hormuz will be closed completely. Okay, that was from 3 hours ago, but I just saw something from 30 minutes ago. Oh, it says IRGC defections may start to scale up as conflict drags on. Okay, so they're having defections. Let's get into it. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. And also, we have to talk about Trump threatening to send ICE to the airports. Everything is resolved in his mind. He resolves everything by making threats. When people don't do what he wants, he just starts spewing threats. Like everyone has to be fearful of him.
Of a process to forge a diplomatic outcome betrayed diplomacy by supporting the genocidal Israeli regime's launch of an illegal war of aggression on the Iranian nation. Not content with such malign actions, the United States itself has now also opted for a dangerous military operation and aggression against the people of Iran. In doing so, the US administration holds sole and full responsibility for the consequences of its actions, including the Islamic Republic of Iran's right to self-defense under the principles of the United Charter. In accordance with the UN Charter and its provisions allowing a legitimate response in self-defense, Iran reserves all options to defend its security interests and people. Thank you very much.
We will now be taking questions. We'd like to start with the Associated Press.
It looks like nobody has any questions. It looks like no one has any questions. Okay, please pay attention. He said what he said. I guess they had nothing to say. Okay, Iran was greatly underestimated by the Orange Demon. Of course. Absolutely. I mean, how stupid can you be? When you're going to do battle, you never underestimate your opponent. That's just ridiculous. Okay, that's just ridiculous. But now, let's go to this next clip. Now, hold on. I didn't mean to click off of that. Hold on, beloveds. Someone sent me this. It says IRGC order to prepare nuclear weapons. Huge attack on Israeli civilians. Somebody sent me this, but I don't know whose video this is. I don't really want to use it because I don't know this person, nor do I know if that actually has been reported. Okay, so, but thanks. Let me go to the next clip. This is the Strait of Hormuz is going to be permanently closed. Let's go to this. And then where's that one from 30 minutes ago? ICE agents may be sent to the... Yeah, let's get into this. Okay, I'll find that other stuff. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But let's get into this because I don't want to be on here all day. Let's go to this this report about ICE agents being sent to the airports. ICE agents may be sent to Logan Airport amid TSA staffing shortages. And did you all hear about Elon Musk saying that he would pay their salaries and all of that? Let's get into it. Well, I find it interesting that Elon and Trump are back to being best friends. Okay, after all the trash Elon talked about him being in the Epstein files.
Flight delays
and saying that's why they hadn't been released.
Today, but when it comes to Logan, he's on time when it comes to TSA checkpoints. Behind me is TSA. It has been flowing freely all day long, but that's not been the case for southern airports, especially during this March spring break. But as you said, President Trump says help is on the way for TSA. This is the line at 4 a.m. this morning in front of Fort Lauderdale's airport. Jen Olson's trying to get back to New England.
We were surprised because we had made an effort to go super early and we thought we would beat the line. And even our Uber driver said he had never seen a line like this.
Jen and her husband said it took 2 hours to make it through TSA lines. Here at Logan, we found TSA lines moving quickly without any backups due to airport screener shortages, but found visitors with very different travel stories.
Atlanta is a special place, busiest airport in the world, and those lines are very long there.
Susan Robinson is from Atlanta.
The TSA workers are staying on the jobs. Thanks very much.
That hasn't been the case at all airports. ABC News is reporting that while 50,000 TSA workers continue to work without pay, almost 400 TSA employees have walked off the job. And Thursday, 10% of TSA officers missed work with absentee rates 2 or 3 times higher in some airports. Charlene Taylor is from North Carolina.
Farther south, Atlanta, Houston, it's like a madhouse. So this is a breath of fresh air.
On Sunday, President Trump said on social media, on Monday, ICE will be going to airports to help our wonderful TSA agents who have stayed on the job.
What I'm doing is thanking all these guys. Thank you so much for remaining on the job and keeping us safe.
If you are flying soon, Jen Olson has some advice.
Don't travel. If you can avoid traveling right now, don't travel. But if you have to travel, then make sure you give yourself a lot of extra time.
Good advice indeed. Now, so far, those TSA agents on the job have not had a paycheck in more than 35 days in this partial government shutdown. Now, it's unclear if ICE agents will come here to Logan Airport to help TSA agents. TSA agents here believe that will not likely be the case since so few of them have walked off the job at Logan. We're live in East Boston. I'm Ted Wayman, WCVB News Center 5.
Taxes. These people have not been getting paid and just been going to work. Now, Elon Musk offers to pay the salaries of TSA agents as Trump threatens to replace them with ICE. Can you imagine? You know why he's doing that, right? So they can try to catch illegals at the airport, okay, as they call them. So they can try to catch immigrants at the airport. That's what that is, going and coming. Well, they don't care if they're leaving, but they darn sure don't want to let them come back once they leave. Pay attention. Okay, and remember I told you all this weeks ago. Remember how I told you all weeks ago that I found out that they're allegedly giving information, your flight information, to ICE. So that if you're someone who is a foreigner, if you're a migrant, okay, then they'll be waiting for you when you return. So they can just deport you right back or put you in a detention center. This is what the devils have been doing. Okay, I don't think that they should be allowed to give out people's information. Elon Musk said that he would like to pay the salaries of TSA agents hit by the government shutdown. Some TSA agents who have gone unpaid for weeks have stopped showing up, causing long lines at airports. It's illegal for federal agencies to accept private funding for payroll, so it is unlikely Musk's offer will be accepted. He wasn't going to pay it anyway. He's just trying to make it seem like he's trying to help people, and we already know he doesn't give a darn about poor people. Okay, especially those who look like me, because he's a whole wanton supremacist and a racist devil. Okay, so the world's richest man is offering to pay the salaries of TSA agents who have gone unpaid for weeks as the partial government shutdown drags on. Many TSA agents have stopped working or showing up for work, causing hours-long lines or whatever. He says, I would like to offer to pay the salaries of TSA personnel during this funding impasse. Okay, this is what he said. Sit down somewhere. Do you all believe him? Because I sure don't. I sure don't. I don't believe anything Elon Musk has to say, quite frankly. Okay, but now let's go to this report from Politico, because apparently Iran has done quite a bit of damage to Israel. And then Al Jazeera says, did Israel miscalculate Iranian military capabilities? Well, it looks like they did, and so did Trump. Okay. Here we go. Let's talk about it. Iranian attacks on Arad and Dimona near Israeli nuclear site raised serious questions about Israel's defense strategy. They didn't have one, them nor Trump, but they both think they're so damn smart. Okay, they're not that smart after all. If they were, the war would have been over in 4 to 5 days, as Trump predicted. Okay. So goes on to say Iranian missiles have struck the towns of Arad and Dimona near an Israeli nuclear research center in what Iran says was a response to an Israeli attack on a Natanz nuclear facility in Isfahan province. Now, at least 180 people were wounded in Saturday's attack, and hundreds of people have been evacuated from the strategic towns as the Israeli-United States war on Iran is seemingly entering a new, more lethal phase of fighting. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin SATANyahu said his country had a very difficult evening in the battle for our future. I hope it gets worse. There have been at least 4,564 people wounded in Israel, according to the Ministry of Health, since the start of the war on February the 28th. How many is dead? That's what I'm interested in knowing. An exact figure, if you could. Okay, analysts say that while Israel has regularly waged military campaigns on Gaza, the occupied West Bank, Lebanon, and elsewhere, it is rare for the Israeli public to feel the effects of war like it has over the past 3 weeks. They done effed around and found out. Okay, I want y'all to pay attention. See, they thought they was going to bully the Iranians like they've been doing Lebanon and the people over in Gaza. Is that what they thought? Yes, Claudette says Iran outsmarted them. Yes. And I'm sure it didn't take much. Let's not forget that the Iranians have a 94% literacy rate. Okay, very smart people, unlike some others. Now, with that all being said, in Palestinian territory, including Gaza, Bibi's people, their forces, have used disproportionate force against armed groups who use rudimentary rockets to fire at them, to fire at Bibi's people. Bibi's war on Gaza has been called a pair of Wrangler jeans that you might put on the side of something. Y'all know what I'm talking about? By scholars and rights groups. Now, G side is what I'm saying. Now, with Saturday's high casualty count, the attacks in Iran and Dimona raise a question. Has Bibi's people underestimated Iranian military capabilities? We got to find another word to call these folks. What am I going to call them? Defense analysts describe Iran's missile program as the Middle East's largest and most varied. Developed over decades, it contains ballistic and cruise missiles and is designed to give Tehran reach even despite its lack of a modern air force. Iran they have short and medium range missile systems and longer range land attack and anti-ship cruise missiles. Iran's short range ballistic missiles have a range of roughly 150 kilometers to 800 kilometers, 93 to 500 miles, okay, basically, and are built for nearby military targets and rapid regional strikes. Now, their core systems include the Fatah variants, Zulfiqar, Qiyam-1, and older Shahab 1.5 missiles. Their shorter range can be an advantage in a crisis, and they can be launched in volleys, compressing warning times and making preemption harder. Okay, so in other words, they're handing them their arses. Okay, that's what it's looking like here. Okay, that's what it's looking like. That's what it's giving. GF or FM Gideon accuses Iran of committing war crimes. Let's go to this. This has to be something interesting. Okay, because now this is a clip and I find it also interesting, of Bibi's foreign minister, Gideon Saar, accuses Iran of committing war crimes with missile strikes. Isn't that something? And then talking about those cluster warheads, okay, the cluster munitions. How is somebody who's always committing war crimes going to even complain about them? Okay, if they were happening. That's what I want to know.
Understand the strategy. The strategy is to shoot on civilian populations in order to increase the number of civilian casualties. We had here actually a miracle that the number, seeing the destruction all around, that the number of casualties was relatively low. We had also yesterday, as you know, in Dimona, another attack. In both scenes, we have children that was severely injured. Here we had a children that was literally thrown out from his beds on the 3rd floor.
Okay. Sometimes things come back to haunt us. Now let's go to this clip right here because do you all know SATANyahu was talking about evil, good and evil, and talking about how evil wins over good. Okay, and how Jesus was not as how basically saying that Genghis Khan was more stronger than Jesus, basically. Okay, that's what I got from it. Okay, now you see why people call him SATANyahu. Let's get into it.
Proves that, unfortunately and unhappily, Jesus Christ has no advantage over Genghis Khan. Because if you are strong enough, ruthless enough, powerful enough, evil will overcome good. Aggression will overcome moderation. So you have no choice. If you look at the world as it is today, you have to be blind not to see that the democracies led by the United States have to reassert their will to defend themselves and to oppose their enemies in time while there's still time, before the jarring gong of danger wakes them up and wakes them up too late. This is where we are now. The fact that people don't see that, the fact that a lot of the news media are harking on a lot of fake news, but also a lot of short-sightedness, and do not see the historic period and the historic struggle that we are engaged in now.
There's no struggle. Sit down somewhere with your lying self. Since 96, he's been lying on Iran, and he continues to do so. Okay, and the people that he's talking about, he says he doesn't see how they can see it. Well, because these people are already awakened. He's talking about people need to wake up. They are woke. That's why they don't believe your lying self, and they don't believe Trump, and they don't want anything to do with this war, and they think you're both warmongers and devils. That's what the woke people think. We see beyond the pale. You can't fool us. You can only fool stupid, brainwashed minions, okay, like some of the MAGA cult members. That's the people you can fool, okay? And some of the brain dead that he is clearly amongst his own brainwashed. That's how that works. But those of us who have critical thinking skills, we don't buy into it. And as far as the fake news that he speaks of, that's the fake news and lies and propaganda that is being spewed at the behest of him and Trump to make it look as though they're doing more than what they're actually doing in the war. Okay, so, I'm glad their nuclear facilities got hit. Please destroy them all so they have no more nuclear weapons, because they, in my opinion, are the last ones, okay, who should ever have nuclear weapons. And then next in line would be Trump. But I would prefer Trump to have them even before SATANyahu, okay, because let's just keep it a book. SATANyahu is 10 times more evil than Trump, in my opinion. Trump's just a whole lot more stupid than him. Okay, please pay attention. Now, with that all being said, I'm about to be out of here. Trump's threatening to send ICE to the airports, and we already know, like I told you all before, how they give information on who's boarding what flights, who's coming in, and who's leaving. They give all the information to the Department of Homeland Security. Okay, which I think is absolutely egregious. But before I leave, let's talk about, I almost forgot, let's talk about the shredding of the Epstein documents. And we'll get more into Epstein tomorrow. But let's talk about this really quick. FBI warned bags of documents were being shredded at New York jail days after Epstein's death. And so they say the FBI agents received reports about bags of documents being shredded and discarded at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan days after the death of convicted child predator Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the Miami Herald released a report on Saturday detailing multiple stories from people at the jail who were concerned about the unusual amount of material being thrown away. Epstein died of an apparent suicide in 2019, whatever, we know all the rest. But so shredding documents, I want you all to pay attention. Okay. Now, what documents were these? And why were they at the jail? And I just wonder what was in them. Another thing I wanted to point out is once in the chat, if you all saw the video that went viral of the man who supposedly looks like Jeffrey Epstein, someone recorded this man driving. Somebody recorded this man driving down the highway, and they said he looked like Jeffrey Epstein, and they thought he was him, and the video went viral. How many of you all saw that? Once in the chat. Once in the chat. So that man did an interview with TMZ. I'm going to go to the interview. It's just a couple of minutes, but I'm going to go to it where they talk to him. I mean, he does look like Epstein, which is not a good thing. Okay, it's not a good thing, mind you. Okay, now with that all being said, let me put an overlay on this because y'all know TMZ doesn't play. Hold on. There we go.
Talk to us about how this
Day-to-day.
national scandal has impacted your life.
Sure. Well, I was prepared for it because I've gone viral before, but never to this magnitude. So this random dude was on I-95. He was parallel to my car, and he said, "Look at this guy. This just fell into my lap." He filmed me. He put it up online, hundreds of millions of views, and it's impacted my life. People come up to me. I was at a restaurant. They stopped me. A bunch of Generation Z kids were whispering under their breath. And I went by their table. I said, "Can I help you guys? Are you talking about me?" And they said, "Yes, you're the guy that went viral." I said, "That's me." So I'm recognized. I've always been recognized. When he first got arrested, when he was on the New York Post, I guess he died in 19 or 18. So when he got arrested, when he came back from Paris and they took him to the correctional facility, I was on the Post. I lived in the city. And people were always circling me around me and giving me double looks.
Hold on. Wait. In 2019, you're saying you lived in New York City?
Yes.
Oh,
so you've been everywhere
he goes.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay. So
Can I give you a couple examples?
Sure.
All right. So I was at a hockey game with my kids, and I'm leaving the hockey game, and a guy has an Instagram account called Liquidity. I think it's like a hedge fund account. And he filmed me, and there was a banner that said, "Jeffrey Epstein rising from the grave." That went viral. So that was one incident. Then there was another incident where I was in a background episode of The Real Housewives of New York City. Sonia Morgan gave me a kiss hello. A Generation Zer was watching it during COVID, posted it on TikTok with the banner, "Why is Sonia Morgan kissing Jeffrey Epstein?" That went viral. They had to take that down. So it's not new to me, but this amount of eyeballs is out of control.
Yeah. What I want to know is when people encounter you, and I'm really serious about this, do they get angry? I mean, do they almost feel like they're no?
No, it's never happened.
Never happened. Huh. Even because the conspiracy theory is that you've heard it, I know, that Jeffrey Epstein is not actually dead.
Right.
And so I would think there would be some people,
I've never had an encounter
who would approach
you. I've never had an encounter in face-to-face, but the comments online are pretty nasty.
Right. You've got to explain to us, you kind of have your hair like Jeffrey Epstein. Did you ever think about just shaving your hair or changing your look? Or are you just embracing this?
I'm me. I'm Palm Beach Pete. I'm a regular guy. I'm retired. I lived in the city for a long time, worked in commercial real estate. I love to play tennis. I'm very social. I'm not going to change. This guy is dead, and he was a really bad person. and I could hold my head high. I didn't do anything. I just happen to have similar looks. I'm just a better looking version than Jeffrey.
Are you worried that people kind of avoid you because they don't want to have a picture taken, and then all of a sudden it gets posted and people say, oh, this was taken in 2015, me and Jeffrey Epstein?
No. I think people think the thing is hilarious. And I honestly, Harvey, never had a bad encounter.
How do you mentioned that you're at a hockey game with your kids. How do your kids feel about it? I mean, you seem very well adjusted. You're fine with it. Does anybody else in your family get bothered by it?
They think my daughter thinks it's funny. I don't really want to get them involved in this. They were cool, hip New York City kids. So they've been exposed to a lot. And they also lived with it when he was, first out there in the public, and people would always stop me. So they were used to that.
So are people coming up to you and asking for selfies to take pictures?
Yes. I was at a restaurant just outside of Palm Beach, and the bartender wanted to take a photo of me. A bunch of Generation Zers were at a table. I went by their table and I said, you're talking about me, aren't you? And they said, you're the guy that went viral. I said, that's me. So it's happening. I was at a restaurant today. A server came up and shook my hand and says, can I shake your hand? So it's out there, Harvey. Back in the day, when I was living in the city, I went to a couple of parties and Epstein was there at a party. And he was kind of creepy, just sitting on a couch, staying to himself. And he wasn't the magnitude that he is or was. So he wasn't a big deal. He was mysterious. People didn't know how he made his money and where he, what his story was. But I never really encountered him and had a conversation with him. I just saw him at a party.
What do y'all think? He said he was a better looking version of Epstein. Well, I'll tell you this. I think both him and Jeffrey are attractive deficient. Just my thoughts. Okay, so that all been said, listen, I'm out of here, okay? I am out of here, beloveds. Oh, hold on. I gotta show you all this. Listen, I have got to show you all this video about Trump. This is further proof that Trump talks too much and just tells people's business. Did you all see that video where he gave the man's medical diagnosis? Did I show y'all that? I don't think I did. This man was running his mouth. Never mind HIPAA laws. I got to show y'all this, and then we're out of here. But he talks, hey, Chili Willie from Philly, but he talks absolutely, Trisha said that's him for sure. Trisha is convinced. I don't think that's him. They just look alike. But, yeah, BB said he overtalks. Yes, he's the nosy person, the gossiper who tells everybody's business. So watch him tell this man's whole personal medical diagnosis in front of everybody publicly. What an idiot.
He's got the easiest job of anybody in government. He's got a majority of 2. I don't like to say 1 because it varies, but between 1, 2, and 3. And I think you're the only man that's ever lived that's able to be very happy about it. In fact, when we get up to 3, every once in a while we get up to 3. Actually, for a period of time, we had it up to 4. And then we had a death. And death is very bad when you're the speaker and you have a majority of 2 or 3. But we had a death, and then we had another death, and we had some things, and but we're looking very strong. We had one man who was very ill. It looked like he wasn't going to make it. I don't know. I won't mention his name. Should I? Do other people know his name? Do you want to mention it? He'll be proud. Go ahead. Tell him the story.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. President. Congressman Neil Dunn of Florida had some real health challenges, and it was very serious, and had a pretty grim diagnosis. And I mentioned it to the president. And I said, Congressman Dunn is a real champion and a patriot because he's still coming to work. And if others got this diagnosis, they would be apt to go home and retire. And
what was the diagnosis?
It was, I think it was a terminal diagnosis.
He would be dead by June.
Okay, that wasn't public, but yeah, okay. That's it was grim. That's what I was going to say. I don't think
with a heart problem, by the way. This was a heart problem.
So the long story short, the president called him to encourage him and thank him, and they had a conversation. And the president mentioned in the course of the conversation, you know how to get my doctors involved, and they did. And within a number of hours, they took him to Walter Reed Emergency Surgery. The man has a new lease on life. He acts like he's 30 years younger, and he walked into the conference meeting, and we thought we'd seen a ghost. And I spoke with him over the weekend, and he's encouraged and thankful, and he thanks the president for his leadership and intervention. And thank you.
He
It's
actually
amazing.
called Mike. Mike called me and he said, "Sir, we're up by 3, but we're going to lose 1 by June." I said, "Who?" "Neil Dunn." He's a great congressman. Incredible. He called to say that he was terminal, really bad heart. There's nothing they can do. I said, "That's bad." Number 1, it was bad because I liked him. Number 2, it was bad because I needed his vote. But he really said, "Mike, I'm going to last this out for the president and you. And however long I live," I mean, it looks like June is the time, but however long I live, I'm going to be voting for you. I mean, how many people are going to say that? Most of them are going to say, "Mike, I'm retiring immediately. That's the end."
He's an extraordinary
But
man.
he didn't do that. It was really impressive. And then I realized I have doctors in the White House. The White House doctors are incredible. And they've helped me with other people. They're helping me with people right now. People that are very sick are like they're miracle workers. And I said, I have to call them. And I called the 2 doctors. They're both great. And they immediately went over to see the congressman. And he was on the operating table like 2 hours later.
Yeah.
And it was a long operation. They gave him more stents and more everything that you could have. I think he's got everything that you could possibly have. And they called up. They said, "Sir, I think he'll be fine." I said, "You got to be kidding." He said, "I think he'll be fine." And Mike was telling me the story that the other day he came into a meeting for the first time in a long while. Go ahead.
Well, it was incredible. I mean, he has a new lease on life. He has more energy than a man half his age, and very encouraged and encouraged all of us. So again, a testament to great leadership. And he's, my hat's off to Neil Dunn and his beautiful wife and family. He's an extraordinary individual.
And
let me tell you something. Then he made a joke at the end saying he did it for the man first and for the vote second. But I find it also interesting because just like you said, Nene said, and Americans can't afford health care. Exactly. But he loves to boast. Trump's one of those people that does something for you and he's going to tell everybody. Y'all know some people like that, right? They do anything for you and everybody has to know. Okay? That's him. He has to let everybody know what he did. He loves getting a pat on the back. Justin told all the man's business in the meantime, mind you. But, that doesn't prove that he has empathy and sympathy. That's just a person that he likes, like you said, and he wanted that man's vote. Okay? At the end of the day, we know he doesn't give a darn about people because he wants to take away Medicare, Medicaid, and things like that. He wants to take away SNAP. What kind of president doesn't want people who are struggling to have an alternate or have some sort of help to get food? Who wants to take away SNAP so that people that are poor, struggling, and going through a difficult time can't get food benefits? Who wants to do that as a president? Well, him, Donald Trump. That too. Okay, that too. And then Elon Musk will sit there and say, that there's so many government programs that need to be cut, that we can't afford them, while he's making all this money off of government contracts. I find it also interesting, honey. The rich will continue to look after the rich and not give a darn about the poor. And that's just the way it has always been. And I guess the way it's going to always be. And some people have the audacity, some poor people, okay, have the audacity to praise these people just because they're rich. These are the same people that wouldn't spit on any of us if we were on fire. Okay, 9 times out of the 10. All right. Anyway, with that all being said, listen, like I said, we're going to talk more about Epstein tomorrow. Shredding files. That's absolutely nefarious. Okay. I don't know what that was all about. Like I said, I would love to know what was in there. But we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Also, I want to show this broadcast about Epstein's death and some things that happened on that day. Okay, there was a report on it, and I want to share. I want all of us to watch that together. Okay, Nice Intimate K said, meanwhile, Trump said he's glad Mueller is gone. Shaking my head. Oh, yeah, that's the kind of things that Trump does. That's the kind, but remember, these are the same people that had so much to say when the world didn't want to cry and grieve over Charlie Kirk, when everyone wasn't sad about Charlie Kirk. Okay, make it all make sense, but they talk all this trash about whomever they want to. All right. So that Jamie said the Hunger Games. Exactly, beloved. That's what I've been telling people for 2 years. Okay, it's going to be like the Hunger Game and Purge out here in these streets. All right, so Nice MCK, thank you for your insight to the topic, beloved. Your contribution to the channel. I appreciate you. Peace, love, and blessings. With that all being said, I will see you all tomorrow. I hope you enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Until next time, each one teach one. That's how we grow and thrive. Do something productive, constructive, but never destructive. And always remember, beloveds, to keep the Most High first in your lives. Peace.
Hey, yo, Nick, hit him with that flavor. Gold all in my skin, God all in my blood. Kings all in my circle, you touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen, why you hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans? I got dreams like King Luther, shed blood like Kunsa. You ain't helping my people, I ain't got nothing to say to ya. I want all the smoke like hookah. Talking reparations, America won't be great until they give us compensation. I'm like, I'm the hottest right now. See a bunch of lames out here trying to jock on my style. They be doing too much. I'm the queen, it's too easy. It's like they all at Popeyes, how they be talking so greasy. I just sit back and laugh while these haters get madder. So nefarious how they don't want my pockets with cheddar. I tell them they can do better. These snakes in the grass can leave a bite on your ass, cause y'all be trusting too fast. I got my foot on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threats. Running through every challenge like a relay, break no sweat. It's a cold game, so I got that blanket with me. Now that my people awaken, ain't no going to sleep. I do not play by my piece, this time I'm playing for keeps. You talking slick, but when I see you like them ends, we gon' meet. And I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood. Kings all in my circle, you touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen, why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood. Kings all in my circle, you touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen, why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got